From this valley they say you are going. I will miss your bright eyes and sweet smile, for they say you are taking the sunshine.
In this episode of Stories from My Life, Bud Van Alstine recounts growing up on a small farm in rural Ontario and persevering to become a high school teacher, a home builder, a husband, a father, and eventually a farmer again, before finally retiring to write novels and play bridge. My name is Sharon Turner, and I'm pleased to be the host of this series. We caught up to Bud in September 2023 at Greenpoint, his off-grid lakeside home on Fagan Lake, just north of Maberly, Ontario.
My grandfather had the misfortune of falling into a scrub. They were going to scrub the floor, and they had this scalding water, and he fell in it. He was still in diapers, and he got badly burned and cooked in his back, and he grew up a cripple. So his right leg was more than 3 inches shorter than his left.
This is your grandfather you're talking about, yeah?
He lived out near Kingston, near Sydenham. So he grew up he was born in 1860, and he grew up, and no way that he would ever be able to afford a farm and that sort of thing. So the only way he could ever manage to get property was to migrate back into the north end of Frontenac County, and he did. He moved up to Crutch Lake. So my dad grew up, born and raised at Pine Lake near Plevna, and they grew up in poverty. And how my grandmother raised 9 kids, and her husband, a cripple, is a challenge. I admire her immensely. I never knew her. She died before I was born, but she must have been an amazing woman.
For sure.
So anyway, when Dad grew up, he wanted to do well. He was a very ambitious man. So he went to the bush, and 2 years he went north and worked in the bush up there at north of New Liskeard. Mm-hmm. He met my mother in 1922. She lived up near Vanacker, near Denby. He met her in 1922, and her family moved north, lock, stock, and barrel in 1923. Got up to New Liskeard and established a home there, just in time to have that massive forest fire that wiped out New Liskeard. Oh, they spent a night in Lake Temagami to escape the fires. And anyway, my dad went up there the second year and married her in February and moved back to Charlotte Lake. Everything was going fine. Then in 1929, the Depression hit, yeah, and Dad's whole operation went into the tank. Dad was looking for a farm, and there was a man at Maberly that had seen Dad as a boy working at 11-year-old, 12-year-old. He saw him working, and he remembered him. And he looked my dad up, and he said, "I hear you're looking for a farm." And Dad says, "Yes, I am, but I have no money." And the guy said, "You take over the mortgage, and you pay on the principal whenever you can, and just pay the interest on the mortgage." So that's the way Dad got started at Maberly. And I had 5 brothers, I'll get it right, yeah, 6 brothers and 1 sister, mm-hmm, and I was born in 1936. Mm-hmm. And my mother had worked too hard. She had 7 kids in 7 years.
It was a tough life.
And working hard,
mm-hmm,
desperately trying to make money you couldn't sell anything, you see. And anyway, when she got pregnant with me, she was having sick problems, and she was sickly, and as the pregnancy went on, she got weaker and weaker. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what month it was in her pregnancy, 7th or 8th. There never was any talk about a preemie, so I presume she was near.
Must have been close to term.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I was born on November the 13th, 1936. And my mother lived for 5 days, After that, I was a cesarean section baby. So we grew up on the farm there at Maberly, and it was a very busy going concern. We had cattle and horses and sheep and pigs and chickens, anything that you could raise and make a dollar on. Mm-hmm. And as there were these 6 kids older than me, and so there was lots of help, and everybody was expected to pitch in. Dad had an expression, if you were around there, if you weren't doing something and everybody else was working, he would say, "Could you make yourself generally useful?"
So he was instilling work ethic in.
We milked and we separated. We sold the cream and we fed the skim milk to the calves. And we had a neighbor up the road who had a new baby, and they had no cattle. And they bought milk from us. So my job every morning was to take a 5-pound honey kale of fresh whole milk up to my neighbors.
And how old were you then?
I would have been 7, 8.
Young, yeah.
And they gave me a dime for this milk. And that was the first money I ever made. We're all good workers, hard workers. And that became, our day would start, if you're milking cows, you have to milk at 6 in the morning, 6 at night, 12 hours apart. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem with your cows, their udders and so on. So we'd start at 5:30 in the morning. We'd have to go and get the cows, bring them in from the pasture, bring in the horses, because we're going to be using them later in the day. And then we'd all pitch in and help milk. And we all would sing as we milked.
Really?
We're all singing country songs and milking, and the faster you sang, the faster you milked.
Do you remember any songs that you sang?
Well, most of them were old railroad songs, you know, like Number 9 and Number 97. And they're old sad songs. They're always old sad songs.
Of course, that's country music. Yeah.
Yes. And later in life, I got to thinking, you know, there was Dad's kids at various stages of their lives. With Mother's family, he'd lost his wife. And here was his kids working, milking, singing their hearts out.
What was that like?
Well, our first school, we went there for 6 years. It was across the bush from our place, a little over a mile. And it was SS number 4, South Sherbrooke. Mm-hmm. And we walked across the bush, rain or shine, winter, summer.
What was the distance you were
walking? A little over a mile.
A mile, yeah.
Across the bush, over open pasture and bush, and we had to cross the neighbors to get to the school. And there was grades 1 to 8 there. Only about a dozen to 15 kids in the school. So 8 grades, some grades with 1, some with 2, some with 3, one with 4. And went to school there for those 6 years. And there was one teacher there that particularly won my heart. I was in grade 2 or 3, and she was Ada Shanks from Fagan Lake, and she taught us to sing songs. And that was, to me, the first time I ever sang a song in school. Anyway, after that school closed, we were bused to Maberly for 2 years.
That would be for grade 7 and 8?
Grade 7
The
and
older
8.
grades,
yes,
yeah.
Yes.
And after that, then there was probably no high school around here. So.
No, this high school was 12, 14 miles away.
So you had to go.
So when I started high school, I had to go, we rented a room in Perth, and I went in there, and there was about 15 of us in that rooming house. There were workers, and off I'd go, and on Sunday night, my dad would drive me in with the 29 Durant, and I'd have this basket, there'd be a little roast of pork in there, and some eggs, and a loaf of bread, and I had a bill at the store downtown, so I could go down and put stuff on the bill if I needed it. But the school was almost incidental. I didn't enjoy the school. I wasn't really interested. I was more interested in working and having a decent meal.
You must have been tempted to just walk away from it all.
I very nearly quit in grade 10.
Yeah.
I decided I would quit, and I talked to Dad about it, and he said, "You're just throwing it all away." And so in grade 11, I quit the restaurant, and by that time I was opening it up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I would cook meals.
Opening the restaurant?
Yeah. And I did that for about a year. And Anyway, I stopped working out and went home and I worked, and I'd go to the bush. My brother would let me go into his bush. I could go into my dad's bush and cut pulp or stove wood or whatever, and I'd sell that. I ended up making more money on the weekends than I was making in town. I was only making like 28 cents an hour in the restaurant, and but I got my meals, and that made it all worth it. Okay? Near the end of grade 12, I discovered, I was told by my principal that I didn't have the right subject selection to go to grade 13. And by that time, I had learned to like school, and I was doing a whole lot better.
You were motivated.
Motivated,
Yes.
making good marks.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to go to university. But because I didn't have the right subject selection, that didn't happen. And this was the end of June. So I had to find, what am I going to do? Here all of a sudden, I'm nothing in front of me. So one of the options at that time was, there was a desperate need for public school teachers. The baby boom after the war had flooded the schools. And so there was the opportunity, if one wanted, to go into teaching. I would never consider teaching. I considered male teachers all sissies, so I had no intention of going into teaching. But in the meantime, I thought, I can go to summer school, I can teach for a year or two or whatever, and I can go back to school in the summertime and get upgraded so I can go to university. So off I go. First of all, my dad and I jumped in the car and we're going to look for a school. Imagine this in this day and age. You go looking for a school to be teaching by jumping in a car and driving down the road.
Yeah.
We drove down to Lanark, went into the secretary there in Lanark, and were hired right on the spot.
Just like that.
Just like that. So I applied for summer school, and off I go to Toronto. Never been in the city before in my life. And off we go to Toronto, and I'm going to summer school. Lonesome as blazes in the big city. And anyway, once I got into the group there in the school, it was fine. But I was learning to be a teacher.
Yeah. And
So I taught. I went in there and survived.
yeah.
The first few days must have been.
And you had multi-grades. It was
yes.
it was just a one-room.
There were 5 grades out of the 8 that I was teaching. And I felt fine with all of the rest of them, but there was one little girl in grade 2, and it broke my heart. I feel I failed her miserably. I was not a primary teacher. We were through the course of study probably by November.
Yeah.
And all I could do was start over again. I think I failed her miserably. But anyway, then the next year I went back to high school and tried to pick up half of my high school. So then I got back into teaching, and I went up to Golden Lake, which is west of Renfrew, and taught there for a year. And felt much more confident in the second year at Western. And like I say, it took 13 years to finish off my teaching certification and my university degree. And in there, I spent a year at Teachers College, of course, in Ottawa.
No kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding. Yeah.
With that man. And, well, then back to this property, and Sandy, I brought her down here. I decided she was the girl for me.
Yeah.
So I brought her down here, and we left the car out the road, not right where your car left, down by the bridge there, the old bridge, and we walked in. I had already punched a road in, but it was just bulldozed. So we walked in, and we sat around here someplace, looked at the lake, and did a little wading in, and so on. And went back out to the road and got back in the car, and I turned to her and I proposed to her. I said, if you think you could, I want to live here. I want to teach in the Perth area.
And you asked her on the spot.
I asked her to marry me, and she said she'd be proud to. And,
Oh my goodness. That's very romantic, Bud.
well, yeah, she
It
blessed
is.
me. That was
Yeah.
the second wonderful thing in my life. And come back to Perth. That was in August 26, 1961, and I started teaching in Bancroft on the first day of September, and we moved to Bancroft. We rented an apartment there, and we moved up there. Our plan was we wouldn't have any kids for 2 or 3 years till we got on our feet. And 2 years after we were married, Sandy was pregnant. And I'll never forget the glow on her face. I always wondered whether this was kind of one philosophy of one of the partners, or who knows.
Whatever.
Anyway,
Yeah.
she had our oldest daughter, Vicky, there in Bancroft, and she had a job there. She was working in a woolen mill. Hire on. We wanted to come to Perth, and we tried to. I even phoned the principal, and he interviewed me, and he wanted to hire me. But the pay was pitiful. Lanark County was one of the 2 lowest paying areas in the province.
Yeah.
So we said, we can't do that. We have to get more money. We have a wife and a child. And
Yeah.
so we took the Globe Mail, and at that time the Globe Mail had the teacher section, a whole section for teachers. The baby boomers had moved into the high schools.
Yeah, there was a big demand for teachers.
There was a 12-page section in the teachers section of salaries, and we didn't look at anything except salary in that 12 pages. Highest paying in the province, Iroquois Falls.
And I bet you said, where on earth is that?
Didn't know where it was. Looked it up on the map, and phoned the principal up, and was hired on the telephone. So I went, and now this wasn't in the public school panel yet. So I went to Iroquois Falls, and we loved it there. I was in the public school panel, but I was interested in moving on to the high school.
Yeah.
So the 3rd year we were there, I moved on to the high school panel and taught 2 years in the high school panel there before I came to Perth. I kept saying to my family, oh my God, I want to buy that property. It was owned by...
This is called Green Point.
We called it Green Point, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to buy this property, but Dad kept saying, Jimmy Truelove never sold a piece of property in his life. He won't sell it. And I kept humming and hawing, and eventually I kept hesitating because I didn't want to hear him say no. So I went down one time to see them, and they invited me in, and they always grabbed the pan as soon as you walked through the door, whatever, and I ate 2 meals, told them why I was there. Well, buddy, he says, I'll think it all over. I'll think it all over.
You told him.
So away I went. He said, come back, son, and I'll think it all over. So a week went by, and I went back. Well, he said, I haven't got time to think it. I'm not through thinking it all over yet. So holding my breath, as it were, away I went again. And I come back again 2 or 3 weeks later. I left it longer. And I went back, and I said, are you going to sell me the property? He said, well, I decided I would sell it to you. Oh, my God. It was just... and I was so happy and so glad. Anyway, I had to go and borrow the money then.
Yes.
And getting this house bought. And I bought an old log house. You couldn't believe it if you saw what this house looked like when I bought it. I think I paid $75 for it. And we took the top log off, it was rotten, and the bottom log, and replaced them. And my brother and I built the foundation. We had the bulldozer in and dug out the foundation and put in the footings, and he put in the cement block walls. I worked with him. And then his son, 15-year-old son, and I went about bringing the logs down. I got my dad's tractor, the farm tractor, and the hay wagon. And we rolled these big long logs on and brought them down. And somehow or other we got turned around in here, and we put the logs back in place. Yep, you got it all. Saying it is, I built a house, she built a home, something like that.
Yeah.
Sandy was the spirit and the soul and the beauty, the kindness, she's a wonderful woman.
What was life like here for you, together
beautiful.
with your family?
Beautiful. It was beautiful. It was...
what was Christmas like, for example?
we quite often would have people here, or we'd go to other people's, you know. It was a typical Christmas. As long as her folks were alive, we'd go there and probably have Christmas here in the morning for the kids, and then go in there. And it was pretty typical. Yeah. Our lives were... The thing about being out here was we had a family life. And when we were in town, their friends lived next door, good kids, but they'd ate off the table sort of thing. And you would sit down at the table to eat, and there would be this nose pushed up against the screen door.
Yeah.
Can Cindy come out and play? And you'd send them home and say, she will phone you when she's ready. And they would go home and phone back.
Can Cindy come out to play?
Yeah. So, and the lake. See, Sandy's dad had a cottage up in Robertson's Lake. So Sandy's father had a cottage up on Robertson Lake. So, and she loved it.
Is
So
that close by here?
it's about 40 miles away.
Oh, okay.
So,
So
Sandy,
she was not unfamiliar with
No.
living on a lake then?
not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. She loved
Yeah.
it. She loved swimming. And it was idyllic. Well, there were a few things. We paid a bit of a price, but as soon as we accepted the idea that we're going to be off-grid, she would organize her day so that when she turned the generator on in the morning, she would get everything done that day that she needed to use electricity for. Maybe 3 times in the day or twice, she would start it up and fill up the water tank. And the rest of the time, there was no problem at all. She had an electric washing machine, she had a fridge, and singing in the car coming home.
Yeah.
I
Well,
drove,
you were singing Milking Cows when
Yes.
you were a young boy, so that's not so surprising.
I drove very small cars all my life. My theory was if you couldn't push it, it was too big for you. And I'd drive a small car, and if I got stuck, I'd just get out and push it over the snowbank or whatever and drive on. If you couldn't get up a hill, you could and slid in the ditch, you could push it out.
Yeah.
But I remember us numerous times, you'd be coming home or whatever, the 3 kids in the car, or the girls mostly before Tom was born, driving in and out the Dorn Road, singing their hearts out.
Oh my goodness. So it was a big part of your life then, as a
Oh yeah,
family.
music was.
Yeah,
I can play pretty near anything, but I can't play anything well.
So you do play piano? Or you did?
I can pick out a melody with one hand and chord with the other,
Yeah.
but I'm no good at it.
Yeah.
If I worked at it,
You would be.
I do have good fingers yet, but I pick on the guitar, I play the violin. I'm on a little bit of a violin kick right now.
So then you weren't unfortunately given too many more years together.
Unfortunately.
Can you talk about that, Bud?
I want to include her. She is so much a part of the family and the history. This is her history.
Yeah.
And she was such a key part of it that to leave her out is to
You can't leave her
deny
out.
reality. You know?
Yeah.
And the problem started in June of 1914. I call
2014. You mean.
2014.
Yeah.
I call it our
In
summer,
June.
our
Yeah.
year from our summer from hell.
Yeah.
But anyway, they let her die from the heart condition. I saw the last pulse of her life. So that's Sandy's chapter.
And so what did you do in your
I
immediate?
went farming, and by the way, I became the biggest Van Alstine farmer there was. We used to have, my dad there, around 35 head of cattle. I had 50 cows, 50 calves, 50 yearlings. So I have no idea if that was me trying to prove something or not.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
So you went back to what you
I
started,
went back
to your
farming,
roots.
and
Yeah.
I was doing construction, like building
Yeah.
and in the bush and whatever. Frank, my brother-in-law and I went working. We were cutting cedar brush and we were cutting wood in the wintertime, stove wood. We worked another, I don't know, 8 or 10 years doing that sort of thing, making pretty good money. And maybe we quit a little early because we like to have our beer at the end of the day, sit down and have a beer and feel good.
You've had an extraordinary life. Thank
It's been
you.
interesting.
Thank you very much, Bud.
And thank you.
All the best to you.
Thank you very much.
Halfway a while. Come and sit by my side ere you leave me. Do not hasten to bid me adieu, but remember